In the world of today, you hear a lot of talks about whether Africa should be forced to make a choice between China versus the United States. I think that's the wrong choice.
In Africa, a visiting Chinese professor delivered a jarring truth. The real competition of the future may not be America versus China, but AI versus humanity itself. For Africa, this was more than theory. It was a warning. If the continent fails to join the AI revolution now, it risks being left behind forever. But his message was also hopeful. Just as China rose from poverty in 1978 to global power today, Africa too can transform within a generation. If it refuses false choices, focuses on development, secures itself through growth, and demands a voice in global affairs. His words were not diplomatic. They were a roadmap for Africa's survival and its rise. But will Africa rise? Let's find out. When the Chinese professor stood before his audience, he didn't waste time dressing his words in politeness. He called the age we are living in by its true name, the age of artificial intelligence. For him, the revolution was not something on the horizon, waiting for Africa to prepare. It was already in motion, a storm sweeping through economies, cultures, militaries, and even personal lives. The challenge, he warned, was not whether Africa should join it, but whether Africa could afford the cost of being left behind. He spoke of an AI divide, a chasm that will not simply separate nations by wealth, but by capability. This divide will exist between people with advanced tools embedded in their brains and those without. Between companies that can process oceans of data in seconds and those still using paper records. Between governments that wield AI to govern and those overwhelmed by it. His warning carried a stark truth. The real danger is not that Africa will be colonized by another foreign empire, but that it will be colonized by technology it does not control.
We are now already in the middle of this AI revolution. When you travel throughout the corners of African continent, you have the worry that Africa is not fully integrated into this AI tsunami revolution.
Across the continent, the signs of vulnerability are everywhere. Many African countries are still struggling with internet connectivity, basic electricity access, and underfunded universities. How then will they compete in a world where intelligence itself is automated? In countries like Nigeria or Kenya, startups experiment with AI for agriculture or mobile banking. But these remain small sparks in a storm dominated by massive corporations in the United States and China. The professor's words pierce the illusion that Africa can wait until it is ready. AI does not wait. Yet he did not speak as though Africa's fate were sealed. He offered a lifeline: open source AI. In his view, platforms emerging in China, such as DeepSeek, represent a new model of technological access, one that lowers the cost and opens the door for more participants. This is crucial for Africa, where funding for large-scale proprietary AI projects is limited. If African developers, universities, and policymakers embrace open systems, they can avoid exclusion from the new digital order. But there is an even deeper message hidden in his speech. AI, he argued, should not be viewed as a foreign gift or threat alone. It must be seen as a test of Africa's confidence in itself. Will African leaders mobilize resources, build institutions, and craft policies that place the continent at the center of the revolution? Or will they once again let external actors define their role? The professor's challenge landed with weight because it framed AI not just as a technological question, but as a question of sovereignty. If Africa embraces this revolution on its own terms, it has the chance to rewrite its destiny. If not, it risks being spectators in a drama that will decide the fate of nations.
Power generation. You need power. You need to generate power. I understand, even in this great country of Rwanda, you may not have sufficient amount of power. Focus on that. Get that done. That will provide a much better context, whereby security for Rwanda, security for Africa as a continent will be better reinforced.
But here lies the next dilemma. How can Africa make bold decisions about AI when it is constantly pressured to choose sides in global rivalries? That is where the professor's second warning takes shape. the professor's speech in Kigali carried another challenge that went beyond algorithms and machines. As he shifted from the language of technology to the language of politics, his words cut through one of the oldest traps Africa has faced, being forced to choose sides in great power rivalries. He told the audience plainly, "Do not be forced by any other country to make a choice which will not serve your fundamental interest." For him, the debate so often presented to African leaders, whether to follow Washington or Beijing, is a false debate. It assumes Africa must always orbit around someone else's gravity. But his reminder was sharp. Sovereignty means Africa has the right and the responsibility to make its choices based only on what serves its people.
But don't be diverted. Don't be confused by some other country coming to you, say, no, let's put a premium on certain other things, on values, etc. And I do not want to build a bridge or a highway or a railway or a power station in your country. But if those countries which build these infrastructure projects in your country, they are not really meant good for you. No, that's not the truth. Decide with yourself. Use your own judgment as to which countries are really helping you to beef up infrastructure connectivity, your manufacturing capabilities, and in the African context in itself.
The danger of this forced rivalry is not theoretical, it is historical. During the Cold War, the continent became a chessboard where the US and the Soviet Union funded coups, armed rebellions, and supported dictators, all in the name of influence. The cost was paid in African blood and African futures. Today, the risk is repeating the same cycle, only with new names: Washington and Beijing instead of Washington and Moscow. The professor's argument dismantled the idea that alliances must be permanent. If the United States delivers projects that genuinely improve African lives, power plants, factories, schools, and technology, then partnership makes sense. But if America insists on lectures, sanctions, and hollow promises, then following its lead serves no purpose. Likewise, if China builds infrastructure that creates jobs and strengthens Africa's industrial base, then engagement is rational. But if it ever strays into exploitation, Africa must be prepared to step back. This is a call to judge partnerships not by flags, but by deeds. It is also a call to stop treating foreign powers as saviors. The professor urged Africans to use their own brainpower, their own judgment, instead of being swayed by external pressure. In his eyes, true independence is not just about ending colonial rule decades ago. It is about breaking free from the mental colonization that convinces Africa it cannot decide for itself. Recent events across the continent prove how timely this message is. Ethiopia pushed forward with the Grand Renaissance Dam despite international pressure, defending its right to generate electricity for its people. In Burkina Faso, the government rejected military partnerships that did not deliver real security, instead seeking partners willing to build infrastructure alongside defense. These are not random acts of defiance. They are examples of applying the principle the professor outlined: Africa first, everyone else second. And yet, his message was not one of isolation. He was not telling Africa to close its doors. Rather, he was urging the continent to open its doors wisely, only to those who bring tangible contributions to development. This is where his speech gained its sharpest edge. He was not talking about theoretical geopolitics. He was reminding Africans that their very survival depends on choosing partners who build, not those who manipulate. By reframing the question of alliances, the professor set the stage for a deeper point. It is not enough to reject false choices. Africa must also believe in its own capacity to achieve miracles. And to prove that, he offered a surprising comparison that turned every head in the room. Kigali today, he said, is in better shape than China in 1978. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue.
The philosophical point I want to emphasize is that if China can do this in 46 years, Rwanda and Africa can do it in the coming 4 decades or so. Have faith in yourself. China is a success story which can be repeated by the great people here in Rwanda and the great people here in.
For many Africans, China now seems like a distant giant, a country whose skyscrapers, factories, and global power feel impossible to replicate. But the professor reminded them that China's rise began from a place far weaker than Rwanda finds itself in now. In 1978, China was a poor, largely agrarian country emerging from years of turmoil. Its GDP per capita was among the lowest in the world. Its cities were underdeveloped, its infrastructure fragile, and foreign investors had little interest. Yet within a single generation, China transformed itself into the world's manufacturing hub and the second-largest economy. How did this happen? By focusing relentlessly on reforms, opening up to investment, and, most importantly, believing in its own ability to succeed. This is where the professor's words hit their target. He wasn't flattering Rwanda. He was issuing a challenge to Africa as a whole. If China could move from poverty to prosperity in just 4 decades, why can't Africa do the same? Why should Kigali not be the launching pad for a similar miracle? The comparison shattered the myth that Africa's destiny is to always lag. To make the message real, look at the progress Africa has already made. Ethiopia has shown what determination can achieve by building the Grand Renaissance Dam, a project that will redefine its energy landscape. Nigeria's fintech industry has grown into one of the most vibrant in the world, proving that Africans can lead in digital innovation. Burkina Faso has built its first gold refinery, ensuring that more of the continent's resources are processed at home instead of being exported raw. These examples echo the professor's point. Africa does not lack capacity. It lacks faith in its own trajectory. But belief alone is not enough. China's story reminds us that development requires discipline, long-term planning, and unity of vision. When Deng Xiaoping launched reforms in 1978, he made development the central priority. He did not allow ideological debates to overshadow practical needs. That focus is exactly what Africa requires now. Leaders must put aside distractions and make development the foundation of their governance. The professor's comparison between Kigali and Beijing in 1978 is not about the two cities themselves. It is about showing Africa that the leap is possible. Rwanda's current state is proof that the foundation is already stronger than what China had when it began its rise. The question is whether African leaders and people are willing to seize this moment, to transform optimism into action. And here lies the transition to his next truth. For miracles to flourish, they must be planted in fertile soil. That soil is not military power, nor foreign aid, but something far more enduring: security built upon development. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. As the Chinese professor moved from development miracles to the foundations that sustain them, his tone sharpened. He reminded the Kigali audience that prosperity cannot survive in unstable soil. Roads, factories, and schools cannot flourish if the ground beneath them is shaken by unrest. Security, he insisted, is not something you can import or borrow from others. It must be built at home, brick by brick, through stability, peace, and above all, development. This truth is one Africa knows painfully well. In the Sahel, nations have poured money into military hardware, often supplied by foreign partners, yet insurgencies persist. Why? Because young men without jobs or electricity in flashpoints, not because the people hate each other, but because poverty and underdevelopment keep resources scarce. The professor's words exposed the illusion. Security purchased with weapons but without development is a mirage that dissolves at the first sign of crisis. He outlined 3 pillars that must hold any secure nation upright. The first is stability at home, governments that command legitimacy and can meet basic needs. The second is peace with neighbors, because constant hostility across borders drains resources and breeds mistrust. And the third, the hardest truth of all, is development. Without jobs, infrastructure, and opportunity, the first 2 pillars crumble over time. Development, he stressed, is not a luxury. It is the foundation. This idea challenges how security is often framed in Africa. Too many times, leaders equate security with armies, foreign bases, or international peacekeeping missions. But the professor flipped that narrative. He warned against being seduced by countries that preach values while refusing to build power plants or highways. If someone tells you not to work with others, he implied, yet they themselves will not build your bridges or railways, what good are they to you? Security that does not come with development is hollow.
Africa. Now, another piece of advice. What is the foundation upon which security should be based? Not only for Rwanda, but for Africa. Security never exists in a vacuum. Security should be based on several things, which are the pillars. One is maintain stability at home. The other one is keep peace with your neighbors. And the third one, as Deng Xiaoping, for whom I had the great honor to work with before, development is the hard truth.
Consider Rwanda itself. Its recovery after the horrors of the 1994 genocide was not just about silencing guns. It was about building institutions, creating industries, and restoring dignity through development. Today, its reputation for stability is rooted in clean streets, functioning services, and an economy that gives people reasons to believe in tomorrow. Compare this to regions where foreign troops patrol but infrastructure lies in ruins. The contrast proves the professor's point. Africa cannot keep outsourcing its safety. True security is born when electricity flows into villages, when farmers can reach markets on paved roads, and when factories absorb restless youth into productive work. Those achievements are worth more than any foreign military alliance. Having laid out the foundations of technology, sovereignty, development, and security, the Chinese professor arrived at the last, and perhaps most urgent, point of his Kigali speech. He looked beyond Rwanda, beyond Africa, to the global stage. And his question was as direct as it was unsettling. How can a continent of 1.4 billion people, rich in resources and youth, continue to be sidelined in the world's most important decisions? He spoke specifically of the United Nations Security Council, the body that decides on war and peace, sanctions and interventions. For decades, Africa has been present only as a guest, never as a permanent member. 15 nations shape the fate of the world, yet Africa, home to nearly a fifth of humanity, holds no permanent seat. This is unacceptable, he stressed. Africa must not whisper in the corridors while others speak in the chamber. Africa must project its voice. The connection to his earlier arguments was clear. Security built on development gives Africa the stability to stand tall. But standing tall is meaningless if the world does not hear you. That is why he called for a stronger African Union, one that can consolidate the continent's weight and demand recognition. Fragmented voices, he argued, will always be ignored. But a single African voice, rooted in unity, can no longer be dismissed.
I hope, personally, for all the Security Council meetings of the United Nations Security Council, there will always be a representative representing Africa. So it is not one of the 15 member states of the Security Council of the United Nations, but African voices need to be fully reflected in the proceedings. And consultation need to be made for African wisdom and leadership, etc. And great leaders in Africa, especially a great leader like President Kagame, for example, need to lead Africa.
This demand is not about symbolism, it is about power. When wars break out in Africa, it is the Security Council that decides who intervenes. When sanctions are imposed, it is that body that chooses winners and losers. To leave Africa permanently outside is to continue a colonial arrangement in a new form. Decisions about Africans made without Africans. The professor's words struck a nerve because they exposed this hypocrisy in global governance. Yet he was also practical. He noted that Africa must earn this voice not through charity, but through strength. A continent that builds its infrastructure, grows its industries, and masters new technologies like AI will not be asking for a favor. It will be demanding its rightful place as an equal partner in shaping the world order. This is where his earlier warning about AI came full circle. Even if Africa gains a permanent seat tomorrow, it will mean little if the continent remains technologically dependent. A voice without tools is a voice that echoes but does not shape outcomes. Political representation must be matched with technological power. Only then will Africa's voice not just be heard, but respected. And so, the professor's roadmap ended where it began, with urgency. Africa must accelerate into the AI age, judge partnerships by deeds not rhetoric, believe in its own potential, build security through development, and then with confidence, claim its seat at the global table. For him, the future is not waiting. The AI revolution will redraw the map of power, and Africa has only two choices. Speak with authority in that new world, or remain silent while others decide its fate. Should Africa wait for others to define its future, or take control of it now? Let us know in the comment section who really deserves Africa's partnership, those who talk or those who build. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.